Welcome to today's Explainer. So, if you're a 10th grader staring at a page of 19th century literature and, thinking it just looks like this dusty, boring wall of text, well, let's change that right now. Today, we're going to absolutely crack the code on classic literature. Because honestly, here's the secret. Underneath all that older vocabulary and those super formal sentences, what we're really looking at today is a hilarious, incredibly relatable argument between a husband and a wife. Seriously, think of it less like a dry textbook and way more like the script for a modern reality TV family drama. We're going to become literature detectives, and we'll use a foolproof step-by-step guide to decoding classic banter. Let's get into it.
Okay, let's dive into this. At first glance, this text might just look like a whole lot of dense, confusing dialogue. But guys, this is actually an absolute masterclass in passive-aggressive communication. It's this super lively conversation between two parents, Mr. and Mrs. Bennet, and they have wildly different approaches to a huge piece of neighborhood gossip. We're going to break down exactly what they're saying to each other, and honestly, what's even more important, what they're not saying.
So, here's our roadmap for today. First, a quick introduction to the Bennets. Then, Step 1, identify the motive. Step 2, decode the sarcasm. Step 3, analyze the plot twist. Step 4, master the vocabulary. And finally, we'll wrap up with some final questions.
All right, let's kick things off with our introduction to the Bennets, a classic couple.
Right out of the gate, we see the totally contrasting personalities that fuel this entire scene. Mrs. Bennet is anxious, she's driven, and man, she is extremely dramatic. Mr. Bennet, on the other hand, is calm, sarcastic, and just loves to poke fun at his wife's anxiety. Look at how the scene opens right in the middle of Mrs. Bennet's dramatic complaining. She says, "My dear Mr. Bennet, how can you be so tiresome? You must know that I am thinking of him marrying one of them." Notice how we're just dropped right into the middle of the action here. She's goal-oriented, she's super annoyed, and she's already scolding her husband for not being on the exact same page as her. But what exactly is that page?
That brings us to Step 1, identify the motive.
Whenever we're reading a confusing scene, we should always stop and ask ourselves, okay, what does this character actually want? What's really driving them? If we look closely at Mrs. Bennet's lines, her logic actually flows perfectly. A wealthy young man named Mr. Bingley, a guy with $4,000 a year, as she explicitly points out, is moving into the neighborhood. So Mrs. Bennet demands that her husband visit him literally as soon as he arrives. Why? Because her ultimate goal, her primary motive behind all this fancy old-school language, is simply to secure a wealthy husband for one of her daughters. Basically, she's playing matchmaker, and she desperately needs her husband to make the first move to set this whole plan in motion.
Moving right along to Step 2, decode the sarcasm.
Now that we actually know what Mrs. Bennet wants, we really need to look at how Mr. Bennet responds. Mr. Bennet is our perfect, practical example of a masterclass in saying the exact opposite of what he actually means. If you take his words literally, you're going to completely miss the joke. Here's Mr. Bennet's actual quote. "I will send a few lines by you to assure him of my hearty consent to marrying whichever he chooses." Now, hold on, does a responsible father write a literal blank check, giving away his daughter to a total stranger? Of course not. No way. And this brilliantly illustrates how to translate Mr. Bennet's deadpan sarcasm into plain English. He's pointing out just how absurd it is to assume this stranger will just, pick one of their girls like an item off a menu at a restaurant.
And Mrs. Bennet's reaction to this teasing? Absolutely priceless. She cries out, "You take delight in vexing me. You have no compassion on my poor nerves." Guys, this is classic, over-the-top drama, and it's so relatable, right? I mean, have you ever heard a parent in a highly dramatic argument talk about how stressed out they are, or how the other person is literally giving them a headache? That's exactly what Mrs. Bennet is doing here. She's weaponizing her poor nerves to try and win the argument and make him feel extremely guilty. Which leads us beautifully into Step 3. Analyze the plot twist. Let's see how this builds, because just when we think we totally understand their dynamic, where she complains and he just deflects, we hit a major turning point in the text where the power dynamic shifts completely. Get ready for the big reveal from the source text. Mr. Bennet was among the earliest of those who waited on Mr. Bingley. Yep, he had secretly visited him the entire time. He intentionally kept his wife completely in the dark, just letting her stress out and complain. Also, he could tease her. He actually always intended to visit Mr. Bingley, but he just wanted to have a little fun at his wife's expense first. Classic.
And look at how incredibly quickly her tune changes once that twist is revealed. Her mood flips instantly from complaining about her nerves to just showering him with praise. "How good it was of you, my dear Mr. Bennet. I was sure you loved your girls too well to neglect such an acquaintance." The twist completely, 100% resolves her immediate anxiety. Suddenly, magically, he isn't tiresome anymore. No, now he's an excellent father.
All right, time for step 4, master the vocabulary.
So now that we've decoded the plot and those hilarious character dynamics, we're totally ready for the final piece of the puzzle. We can't be true literature detectives without mastering our toolbox, right? And that means looking at the specific words they use in their banter. Luckily, your textbook provides a built-in glossary. This is your ultimate cheat sheet to locking in your understanding of these older 19th century words. Let's look at a couple of the absolute most important ones that fueled the argument we just analyzed.
First up is the word vex. The glossary defines it as to irritate or annoy someone and make him angry. Remember Mrs. Bennet's poor nerves? Well, this explains exactly what she meant when she accused her husband of taking delight in vexing her. She's literally saying to him, "You enjoy irritating me and making me angry."
Next is the word flatter, which is defined as to compliment unduly, especially for gain or advantage. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how Mr. Bennet actually uses this word. Earlier in the text, Mrs. Bennet calls him handsome, basically trying to butter him up so he'll do what she wants. He replies, "My dear, you flatter me." He's using the word totally sarcastically. He knows for a fact she is only complimenting him to gain an advantage, specifically to get him to go visit Mr. Bingley.
Let's quickly recap the literature detective step-by-step process we just went through. 1. Identify the motive. Figure out what the characters actually want. 2. Decode the sarcasm. Please don't take everything literally, especially from a character like Mr. Bennet. 3. Track the plot twist. Pay close attention to when their actions contradict their earlier words. And 4. Master the vocabulary. Use context and your trusty glossary to translate that old-school language. Boom! We now have a completely repeatable method for decoding literally any classic text we encounter in 10th grade.
Now for the final section, final questions, putting it all together.
And honestly, here's the best part of all this. By following these steps, we've already done all the heavy lifting needed to answer the specific assignment questions at the very end of your reading. Let's look at the thinking about the text section. Look at question number 3. Why does Mrs. Bennet insist her husband to meet Mr. Bingley? Well, our step 1, identifying motives, gave us the exact answer for this. She insists because Bingley is incredibly wealthy, and her ultimate motive is to set up a situation where he falls in love with and marries one of her daughters. Easy, right?
How about question number 4? It asks, "You take delight in vexing me. You have no compassion on my poor nerves. Explain." So the crucial point is that we actually combined step 2 and step 4 here. Step 4 gave us the specific vocabulary. We know vexing means irritating, and step 2 showed us Mr. Bennet's heavy sarcasm. So we can explain this quote by pointing out that Mrs. Bennet is just reacting highly dramatically to her husband's sarcastic refusal to help her matchmaking scheme, claiming his teasing is literally physically stressing her out.
Which brings us to our final, somewhat provocative question straight from your textbook. How does Mr. Bennet react to the plan designed by his wife? I want you to think about the detective skills we just used today. Does he reject it completely? Does he agree right away? Or does he do something far more interesting, like mocking her right to her face while secretly carrying out exactly what she wanted behind her back? I'm going to leave you to ponder that absolutely brilliant dynamic. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, you guys. Keep using these detective steps, and happy reading.